It started as a feeling between the shoulder blades. That is how it starts for everyone who works this zone. I know that now because I read every logbook on the shelf in the patrol cabin before my first shift, and every one of them, going back 11 years and 7 Rangers, described the same thing in the first week. A pressure, low and centered, not painful, not threatening. Just present the way a sound is present even when you cannot identify its source. By the end of my first week, I had stopped noticing it the way you stop noticing the sound of a refrigerator in a quiet house. It was just there, part of the zone. What I could not stop noticing was the instruction not to look back. That instruction sat differently than the other rules. The other rules had a logic you could work toward even if the logic was not spelled out. Do not enter the eastern gully after 10 at night. Do not use white light on the northern ridge. Do not make camp within 100 meters of the dry creek bed. Those rules had the feel of rules written by people who had learned something from being in specific places at specific times and had decided the learning was worth passing on. The not looking back rule had a different quality. It was not about a place or a time. It was about a direction, an orientation of the body. It felt less like a safety protocol and more like an instruction in etiquette. As if whatever shared this zone with me had a preference about how I carried myself in its presence, and the rule was the formalized version of that preference. My name is Will Carver. I am 49 years old. I spent 14 years as a quality control supervisor at a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility in New Jersey, which is not a background that announces itself as relevant to overnight patrol work in the Yellowstone backcountry. What it gave me was a specific kind of attention. In pharmaceutical manufacturing, you are looking for the deviation. The batch that did not behave the way the previous batch behaved, the reading that fell outside the control limits, the process step that produced a result slightly different from the expected result. You learn to hold the expected state in your mind with precision so that any departure from it registers immediately. That skill, which I spent 14 years applying to drug manufacturing processes, turned out to be exactly the skill this zone required. You need to know what normal looks like with enough precision that the not normal is immediately visible. Most people cannot do that in a landscape they are unfamiliar with. I could do it within 3 weeks. The zone I patrol is in the western interior of Yellowstone, a section of the park that runs along the edge of a caldera feature and then cuts north through a stretch of mixed thermal ground and sagebrush flat that ends at a ridgeline of dead timber. The trail network covers about 9 miles in a rough figure-8 pattern, with the patrol cabin sitting at the intersection point. I walk 1 loop of the figure-8 per circuit, 2 circuits per shift, 18 miles a night, 5 nights a week, in terrain that the public maps label as thermal hazard area, restricted access, and that I have come to understand is restricted for reasons that have nothing to do with thermal hazard. I was given my protocol document on my first day by a man named Tullies who managed the restricted interior division from a field office in a building in the park that I have never been able to find again on any map despite having been to it twice. Tullies was methodical and specific, and he handed me the protocol without preamble and told me the document was complete and that anything not addressed in the document should be handled using the spirit of what the document said rather than the letter of what it did not say. I asked him what he meant by that. He said, when something happens that the rules do not cover, ask yourself what the rules are trying to do and do that. I have used that guidance 9 times in 10 months and it has been right every time. The protocol has 14 rules. Here is what they say. Rule 1. Your patrol covers the western interior zone via the figure-8 trail network. Walk the northern loop first, then the southern loop. Do not reverse the order. Do not walk both loops as a single continuous circuit by cutting through the intersection. Complete the northern loop fully, return to the cabin, check in with dispatch, then begin the southern loop. The separation between the loops is required. The loops are not interchangeable. Rule 2. Do not look back while on patrol. This rule has no time restriction, no location restriction, no conditional qualifier. At any point during the circuit, from the moment you step onto the trail at the start of your shift to the moment you return to the cabin at the end of each loop, do not turn your head to look behind you. If you hear something behind you, log it and keep walking. If you feel something behind you, log it and keep walking. If your name is called from behind you, log it and keep walking, forward only. Rule 3. The trail has 11 marker posts distributed across both loops. At each marker, read the number on the post aloud at normal speaking volume and then stand in silence for 45 seconds. Do not count the seconds aloud, count internally. At 45 seconds, continue. The reading and the silence are both required. The reading without the silence is insufficient. The silence without the reading is insufficient. Both must occur at each marker. Rule 4. The eastern edge of the northern loop passes within 60 yards of the caldera rim. Do not approach within 60 yards of the rim at any time. The trail does not take you closer than 60 yards. Stay on the trail. If you observe changes in the caldera feature from the trail, note them in your log and continue. Do not approach to investigate. Rule 5. Between 11 in the evening and midnight, do not use any light source on the northern loop. Navigate by memory of the trail and by the surface under your feet. If you have not yet memorized the northern loop by your third shift, walk it slowly enough that your feet can read the surface. The no-light window is non-negotiable. If you arrive at the northern loop entry point after 10:50 and before 11, wait at the entry marker until 11 and begin the loop in darkness. Your eyes will adjust. The trail is walkable without light. Walk it. The no-light window was the rule that took the most adjustment in the first month. 14 years of pharmaceutical quality control is indoor work, controlled environments, consistent lighting. The Yellowstone backcountry at 11 at night with no light source is a different category of darkness from anything I had previous experience with. By the second week, I had memorized the northern loop well enough to walk it at normal pace in the dark. By the fourth week, the darkness felt like the right condition for that trail at that time, the way the right temperature and pressure are the right conditions for a specific manufacturing process. The darkness is part of the protocol. It is not an obstacle to the protocol. Rule 6. On the southern loop between 2 and 3 in the morning, do not stop walking for any reason. No marker stops, no log entries, no radio checks. The 2 in the morning radio check is moved to 1:45 to accommodate this. Between 2 and 3, continuous movement at steady pace regardless of what you hear, what you see, or what you feel. At 3, the next marker stop resumes the normal schedule. Rule 7. The dry creek bed that runs through the southern loop has 6 crossing points marked with flat stones on both banks. Cross only at the marked points. Do not cross the creek bed at unmarked locations. Do not step into the creek bed between crossings, even if the bed appears dry. At each crossing, step from the marked stone on one bank to the marked stone on the other bank without touching the creek bed surface itself. The step should be a single stride. If the distance requires 2 steps, take the second step as quickly as possible to minimize contact with the creek bed surface. The dry creek bed crossings are the most technically demanding part of the circuit. 6 crossings per southern loop, 2 southern loops per shift, 12 single stride crossings a night. The creek bed surface does not look different from the surrounding ground. It is the same sagebrush flat, the same pale sandy soil, the same scattered rock. But crossing it at an unmarked point produces the same immediate change in the zone that stepping off the trail produced for Dale Opper in the northeast sector, that sudden shift in the quality of the night around you that reverses when you step back to the correct surface. I have never stepped into the creek bed between crossings after the first accidental test in week 2. The marked crossing stones are the agreement. I step from stone to stone and the agreement holds. Rule 8. If you see an animal on the trail that does not move when you approach, stop at 15 yards. Wait for up to 5 minutes. If the animal moves within 5 minutes, continue your circuit. If the animal does not move within 5 minutes, begin reciting the current code phrase aloud at conversational volume. Continue reciting until the animal moves. When it moves, give it 2 minutes to clear the trail before continuing. Do not pass within 15 yards of the spot where the animal was standing for the remainder of that circuit. I have used Rule 8 7 times. 5 times with deer that moved within the 5-minute wait. Once with a coyote that required 4 recitations of the code phrase before it moved. Once with something I logged as unknown large mammal, dark-colored, stationary at marker 7 on the southern loop, 1:40 in the morning, required 11 recitations before it moved, cleared the trail to the east, did not make sound on departure. I gave it 2 minutes and continued. The spot at marker 7 felt different for the rest of that circuit, not threatening, different in the way a room feels different after a specific event has occurred in it. Rule 9. Radio checks at 9 in the evening, 1:45 in the morning, and 4:30 in the morning on Channel 6. Daily code phrase broadcast at 8:30 each evening. If the code phrase is wrong during any check, do not respond. Remove the battery from the radio and place it in your left jacket pocket. Keep the battery in your pocket until the next scheduled check time. At the next check time, replace the battery, attempt contact, and use only the current day's phrase to confirm. Do not use yesterday's phrase under any circumstances, even if the false transmission used it correctly. The code phrases at this posting have a quality I noticed in my second month. They are all 2-word combinations that describe a state of stillness or ending. Still water, cold ground, pale sky, last light, dry stone. Someone chose these phrases from a vocabulary of quietness, and I have come to think that the choosing was deliberate, that the right language for communicating within this zone is language that is itself at rest. I confirm them each check, and the confirmation feels like the right register for the right place. Rule 10. Do not speak to yourself on the trail. Internal monologue is unavoidable and acceptable. Spoken self-address is not. This includes counting aloud, narrating your observations, commenting on conditions, or any other form of spoken language not required by the protocol. The rule covers any vocalization directed at yourself. Protocol vocalizations, marker readings, code phrase recitations, radio communications are not self-address and are required. The distinction is between language used within the protocol and language used outside it. Stay inside the protocol. Rule 11. At the end of each loop at the cabin, before checking in with dispatch, go to the north-facing window and stand at it for 30 seconds. Do not look out the window, face the window. Keep your eyes at the level of the glass without focusing on anything outside. Hold for 30 seconds, then check in with dispatch. The 30-second window stand is part of the loop closing procedure. Do not skip it. The north-facing window stand is the rule that I spent the most time trying to understand in the first months. You stand at a window and you do not look out of it. You face the glass without focusing on what is beyond the glass. For 30 seconds, it feels like a deliberate withholding of observation, the opposite of what a quality control supervisor trains for years to do automatically. I follow it because the protocol is right about everything else, and I trust it to be right about this. My best understanding after 10 months is that the window stand is the close of the acknowledgement that the marker readings open. The marker readings say I am here, I am present, I see this ground. The window stand says I am done seeing for this loop. I am returning to the inside. The threshold is the glass, and I honor it by standing at it without looking through it. Rule 12. If at any point during the circuit you feel that the pressure between your shoulder blades has intensified beyond its normal level, do not alter your pace. Recite the current code phrase 7 times internally. If the pressure does not reduce after 7 repetitions, recite 7 more. Continue in sets of 7 until the pressure normalizes. Log the location and the number of sets required. Do not stop walking during the recitation. Keep moving and recite simultaneously. The pressure intensification events are the protocol's most direct acknowledgement of what walks behind you on this trail. In 10 months, I have logged 42 intensification events. The largest number in a single shift was 6. The location pattern is consistent across all 42. The events cluster at 2 points on the circuit, the Caldera Rim approach on the northern loop and the Dry Creek bed section on the southern loop, both points where the trail passes closest to a feature that the rules otherwise ask you to avoid or treat with specific care. The pressure is highest where the zone is most active. The recitation works every time. I have never needed more than 4 sets of 7. Rule 13. At the end of your final circuit each shift, before returning to the cabin for your end-of-shift log, walk to marker 1, which is the first marker on the northern loop, 30 yards north of the cabin. Place your right hand on the post for a count of 60. Count internally. At 60, remove your hand and return to the cabin without looking back at the marker. The 60 count at marker 1 is the closing of the shift in the same way the first marker reading opens it. The marker 1 closing count is the part of every shift that I think about most during the day. 60 seconds with my right hand on the post that opens the northern loop at the end of the last circuit, in whatever condition the night has left me. The post is cold, colder than the ambient temperature, colder on active nights than on quiet ones. The cold is information. It tells me how active the night was in a way that my logs confirm. High activity night, deep cold, quiet night, less deep. The 60 count holds regardless. I stand at marker 1 and I count and I remove my hand and I walk back to the cabin and I do not look back at the post. Rule 14. When your posting ends, write a complete account for your replacement. Include every anomaly. Include every deviation, however minor. Include what you have learned that the rules do not say. Leave it where your replacement will find it before their first shift, but after they have read the protocol. The protocol comes first, everything else comes after. I found the First Amendment on my 33rd shift, inside the lining of the spare vest hanging in the cabin closet, sewn into the fabric and only findable because a seam had come loose and the paper was visible through the gap. It said, what walks behind you on this trail has been walking it since before the caldera last erupted. It does not follow you. It walks the same trail you walk because the trail is where it walks and you are walking the same ground. The not looking back rule is not about preventing you from seeing it. It is about maintaining the correct relationship between two things using the same trail at the same time. You are facing forward, it is facing forward. You are both moving in the same direction. The forward facing is the agreement. The moment you turn to look back, you are no longer two things moving in the same direction. You are a thing that has turned to face another thing. That relationship is different from the agreement. The rule keeps the agreement intact. The agreement is what makes the trail walkable for both of you. I read that amendment 8 times on the night I found it. I thought about the 7 previous rangers whose logbook sat on the shelf. I thought about the fact that all of them had described the pressure between the shoulder blades in their first week, and that all of them had followed the not looking back rule, and that 6 of the 7 had completed their postings without incident and left their accounts for the person who came next. The 7th logbook ended mid-shift with no closing entry. I did not look for a pattern in the 7th logbook that would tell me what had happened. The amendment said the agreement was what made the trail walkable, and the agreement required forward-facing, and the 7th Ranger had either looked back or had encountered something the rules did not cover and had handled it incorrectly. I chose to learn the lesson without learning the specifics. The Second Amendment came on my 68th shift in an envelope in the locked cabinet under the desk, findable only because the cabinet key was on my key ring and I had never tried it in that lock before. It said, "The marker readings and the silence are a language, not a language you speak, a language the zone reads." The reading and the 45 seconds of silence together constitute a statement in that language. The statement is, "I am here, I know where I am holding the pattern." Every marker on every circuit is another instance of the same statement. The accumulated statements across a shift constitute a record. The record is read by whatever shares this trail, and the record is what establishes you as a scheduled presence rather than an unexpected one. A scheduled presence is safe on this trail. An unexpected presence is not. You are safe because your statements are consistent and your pattern is reliable, and the thing walking behind you has read enough of your record to know what you are. You are the day shift worker coming in while the night shift is still on the floor. You know each other by the record. The record is everything. 10 months. 10 months of walking 18 miles a night in a figure 8 pattern through the western interior of Yellowstone with something behind me that I am not permitted to look at, and that has read enough of my record to know what I am. I know what I am too. I am a scheduled presence operating within agreed parameters on a trail that has been used by something much older than the park for much longer than the park has existed. I walk my loops and I read my markers and I hold my 45 seconds and I cross the creek bed on the marked stones and I keep my eyes forward and I put my hand on marker 1 for 60 seconds at the end of every shift. The pressure between my shoulder blades is there every night. I stop noticing it the way you stop noticing the refrigerator in a quiet house, but it is there. It has been there since the first week and it will be there on my last night, and it means the same thing it has always meant. Something is behind me on the trail. It is facing forward. So am I. That is the agreement. I am not going to look back. Brand new narrator Will Carver, 49, pharmaceutical quality control background, Western Interior Yellowstone, Figure 8 Trail Network, Caldera Rim as forbidden approach, Dry Creek bed crossings as technical protocol, no light window on northern loop, 2 in the morning continuous movement window, marker readings and silence as language framework, 2 amendment sheets, marker 1 closing. Count code phrases drawn from stillness vocabulary, completely different supernatural logic from the Dale Opera version, plain grounded language throughout, full template structure followed, clean and ready for your voice generator, ready for the next one whenever you are.